Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a pretty high-stakes intellectual showdown from almost 2,000 years ago. Picture this, the Apostle Paul, all by himself in Athens, which was basically the philosophical capital of the entire world. So what happens when this radical new message of his runs headlong into the smartest, most sophisticated minds of the era? Let's find out. So, our story kicks off not with some big, elaborate plan, but with a gut reaction. Paul is literally just waiting for his friends to show up. But as he's looking around Athens, he's just overwhelmed. The city is practically a forest of statues and shrines to every god imaginable, and it just hits him right in the soul. And that powerful emotional response, it becomes the unexpected spark for his entire mission there.
Now, you got to understand, this wasn't just Paul being a little annoyed or, culturally offended. The text tells us this was a deep, profound spiritual provocation. Something was being stirred up inside him so powerfully that he knew he just couldn't stay quiet.
And to really get this, we've got to look at the original Greek word. It's paroxynasto. This is so much more than just distress. It's an intense, inward agitation, almost like a holy anger that just compels you to do something. The feeling is that this was the Holy Spirit literally setting his spirit on fire, turning his passive waiting into this divine motivation to act.
So what does Paul do now that he's fueled by this spiritual fire? Well, he doesn't just wander out and start shouting on a street corner. No, he puts together this brilliant two-part strategy to engage the whole city, from its religious center all the way to its secular heart. His game plan had two key parts. First, he goes to the synagogue. That's his usual starting point, right? He's talking with Jews and other religious folks who already have a shared background in the scriptures. But then, and this is so important, he takes that exact same core message and walks right into the agora, the busy public marketplace, ready to talk and debate with absolutely anyone who will listen.
And it's right there, in the agora, that the sparks really start to fly. Paul's message about a personal creator God and a literal resurrection from the dead, it just collides head-on with the biggest philosophies of the day. It was a total clash of worldviews.
He immediately runs into two major groups. On one side, you've got the Epicureans. For them, the goal of life was pleasure, which they defined as just the absence of pain. And they figured the gods, if they even existed, were totally hands-off. And then on the other side, you have the Stoics. They were all about virtue and reason, and they believed God was more of an impersonal divine force, a logos that was in everything.
So you can see the problem here, right? To both of these groups, what Paul was saying sounded completely alien. The idea of a personal God who actually created everything and was going to one day raise people from the dead, it wasn't just wrong in their eyes, it was nonsensical, it was absurd. So how did these brainy elites react?
Well, some of them just hit him with this incredibly condescending insult, spermologos. It literally means seed picker, like a little bird that just pecks up random scraps of seeds off the ground. They were basically calling him an intellectual scavenger, a babbler who just spouts random ideas he's picked up somewhere without any real clue what he's talking about.
Then you have this other reaction that kind of shows you the huge cultural gap. Others heard him talking about Jesus and the resurrection. But see, the Greek word for resurrection is anastasis. So to them, it sounded like he was trying to introduce a new divine power couple to the city, some foreign god named Jesus and his partner, the goddess Anastasis. A complete misunderstanding.
But here's the crazy twist. This wild mix of intellectual smack talk and just plain old curiosity, it actually opens up this unexpected and totally strategic door for Paul.
The author, Luke, gives us this little aside, this crucial piece of cultural intel about the Athenians. They were obsessed with novelty. Their whole culture was built around hearing and debating the very latest thing. They were like intellectual tourists, always on the hunt for a new idea.
And that love of new ideas is exactly what gets Paul his big break. They take him to the Areopagus, which is also known as Mars Hill. This was the spot, the highest intellectual court in the entire city, where new philosophies and ideas were officially presented and debated.
And let's be clear, this wasn't a trial. This was a prime-time speaking engagement. This was basically the ancient world's version of getting an invitation to give a TED Talk. only your audience is made up of the most brilliant and skeptical minds on the entire planet. Paul just got the main stage.
Okay, so what can we pull from all this? From Paul's strategic and, let's face it, courageous approach in this ancient clash of wisdom? Why does this story from so long ago still matter for us today?
You know, this story really gives us a timeless playbook for engaging with our own world. It all starts where Paul started, letting our spirits be stirred by what we see in the culture around us. And from there, it's all about knowing your audience. You speak one way to those who share your background, your synagogue, and another way in the public square, the marketplace. And that takes courage, not just to speak up, but to step onto those intimidating stages when an opportunity comes along, and to turn curiosity or even mockery into a platform.
So ultimately, this account isn't just a fascinating piece of ancient history, it's a direct challenge. It really pushes us to ask ourselves, what are the intellectual and cultural centers in our own lives? What are the marketplaces of ideas where we're being called to show up and engage? In other words, where is your Athens?